Hey, Andy, put on a jean jacket.
Yeah, go on, off you go.
Go on, Doug. Hit me. Hit me with a question.
So, what's the difference between regular acting and stunt acting?
Well, not a lot, except that one's obviously more about the physical than it is about the emotional. You know, if you're doing a drama scene, the stress is being believable, understanding what you want out of a scene, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Stunt acting, of course, is still, you're still telling a story. That's what people need to realize. We used to call it nonverbal dialogue, where, you know, if you're doing an action scene, it should be a continuation of the story, the dramatic story that now becomes physical. For instance, every fist fight, whether it's Scarlett Johansson or Margot Robbie or whatever, none of that happens by accident. It should be, it needs to be based on what happened prior to that scene. Why am I fighting? Who am I fighting? What is the result I want out of that fight? So the storytelling doesn't change. It's just that there's less talking and there's more physical, if that makes sense. And that's why I think non-verbal dialogue is a really great description of that. Even Jackie was based, he told me that a lot of his scenes, he based on watching very old black and white movies of Charlie Chaplin, Three Stooges, Buster Keaton. He wanted to be able to, with his fights, turn the sound off and still have people just enjoy the pure physicality of the fight. That often went on for ages. But if you look at Charlie Chaplin, a lot of his stuff was about him trying to escape from the big bruising bad guy, and he'd use ladders or umbrellas, and it was all of that. So it's a very comedic sort of take on action, which is what Jackie does. But cut to today, still a lot of action is the physicality. Even though, having said that, I like now where you have action that's interspersed with storytelling, meaning an actual dialogue that goes on. You know, I did a movie with Liam Neeson earlier this year, did the fight coordinating. Now, somebody said, the fight's going to be amazing. I said, well, it depends what you mean. You know, how can they be amazing? You've got a 68-year-old guy who's amazing at what he does, by the way, but he's still 68 that likes to do his own action. So you have to choreograph action and fights that he's able to basically carry out, because he doesn't want to stunt double doing spinning heel kicks and jumping through the air. First of all, that doesn't relate to his character, because you would say, well, hold on, how come that particular character knows how to do that? But he would want to do it all. But what made it work for me is the fact that Liam is such an amazing good actor. You know, the camera just loves him. So you get a fight where it's interspersed with dialogue, with interaction between whoever it is he's fighting with. That to me makes it incredibly enjoyable, and it doesn't make it a sort of a separation from the through line of that story. And what I mean by, in the 80s, I did a lot of movies where as long as you had 6 fights, you could sell it to anybody. It didn't care whether the drama, there was no story. Nowadays it's changed. Do you know what I mean? And hence I say that the action should be commensurate with the actual drama, the coming from, what you want out of it. And it should then just flow naturally with that story and with the character arc of the people involved.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And just listening to that, I mean, that's how you and me met on the Condemned, the Lionsgate film. That's how I met you. It's how I met Sammy, Sam Greco. And it was really interesting to work with you, even though I had sort of a martial arts background, not to your level at all, in pro wrestling. It was really interesting how you become a director in knowing you have to know the story. So you've got to know the script pretty well back to front. You have to know where all these arcs are. And then you're very gentle. Well, you were with some people.
Those that deserved it.
Even though I just come out of hospital with a knee operation, trying to be really staunch and tough, and you laughing behind my back.
Wait a minute. No, nothing. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. But what I do here is, like, you have a really great sense of being very delicate in teaching violent image situations. You know, like the way you teach people, coach them as actors to fight. It's actually not as physical as what you would think until you start, you know, rehearsing it, of course. But it's even then, it's just such a it's just a really easy way you do it, you know. And then on screen, it looks extremely violent, you know, and real.
Yeah, thank you. And in real's the key. That's what I mean. If whatever that character does is done purely because it looks colorful and doing an amazing sort of physical kind of expression of movement, if it's not in line with that character, you lose audiences, I think, you know. That's why the old thing, less is more, sometimes absolutely applies to fights as anything else. Same with drama. The less sort of dialogue sometimes, where a look can convey an emotion, is worth, you know, many words. And I think, you know, I do see a lot of movies where you kind of get the idea that the fight coordinator's gone, well, how many tricks can I fit in this 2-minute segment? But you look at it and you become aware of watching a movie rather than still being engrossed in the actual story and the character arc. And you know, and it might be very, very simple moves, but as long as, and you know better than Andy being a drama coach, that it's all about, whether it's one punch or 10, you look at it, and I have to do that, and I go, do I believe it? Do I believe what this person is doing? It's whether you're delivering a line or delivering a punch, you know, that's what it's about. And it's not always, you look at Karate Kid, the original Karate Kid movie, for us that are in the martial arts, the fights, I probably get in trouble for this, were quite lame. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. But it was a huge hit and a success. Why? Because audiences followed the character. It was the underdog, you know, it's a bit like a martial arts Rocky. And so it all worked, and they will forgive you in not having the ridiculous physicality of some of the Marvel films by the mere fact that it's staying true to character, staying true to the story, and it still gets the job done, you know, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Go, Dougie.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Richard. Just wondering, when you're on a film set at all and you encounter big names, or even when you were the bodyguard for those band names and musicians, did you ever find yourself wondering, is there any way I could get an autograph from them, or is that frowned upon in the film industry?
I love it.
You know, it's in, you know, relationships, getting to work with actors on a daily basis, it's absolutely about relationships. And Andy would know, one of the worst things you can do is come across as just a complete and utter fan. We don't do that, you know. Yes, there'll be stages throughout where you'd establish a relationship where it's completely okay, depending on the moment, to ask for an autograph. I never do it for myself, but sometimes people that are close to me particularly want an autograph, and I find that's okay, but you've got to be very, very careful of that. You don't want to separate yourself. I try, you know, even when training actors, it's important that they have respect for you and what you do, you know, as much as you have for what they do. And once you get that mutual sort of respect, it's not bad. And basically that will often depend on the first few interactions you have with the actor. If you are good at what you do and the way you're teaching, you're giving, my job is to give them the tools they will need for a particular action scene, how to throw a kick, a back kick, or whatever that I think they may need in choreography, make them feel comfortable. And importantly, to make them understand that my job is just to make them look the very best that they can look and be on screen. And once you establish that, I believe it's all good. I can't think of any really bad experiences I've had working with actors. I think I attribute a lot of that to the fact that whether it's a Will Smith or a Margot Robbie or a Idris Elba or whoever, even a John Cena, they're also such professionals. There's no doubt as to why they're so successful at what they do. It's because of commitment. And when they come into a training session, there's a difference between training somebody that's there because they've been told they have to, rather than they're there because they just genuinely want to be the best versions of themselves. And when they commit like that, God, that makes the job easier. You can push them hard. You can do whatever, and it becomes a real. It's a partnership when it comes down to that. Because my job then is to get behind camera, watch the monitor, and be honest with them. And I think I've established that with a lot of them, that they know if something is subpar, that I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Scarlett laughed one day because I said to her in the beginning, I said, look, if you throw a kick, I'm going to tell you, and we'd be on set, you do something and look across and they go, what the you just laugh, and go for it. But I think, and again, it's honestly, I just don't have any other agenda than to make them the best version of themselves. And if that happens, everybody wins. They win, I win, the whole movie wins, if we good end result due to that commitment.
Well, that scene that we did in the Condemned, like that was a pretty full-on scene. Like it was me, beating up on that female character, and it was really quite an intense scene when you watch it on film. Like it was quite brutal, and it was real. And in rehearsal, when we first met you, you were working out what I really loved about working with you is you never set any idea, no matter if you had 100, none of them were set in concrete. They were all just there to just work through and see what worked. And then even when I watch it on my, share my demo reel with agents or whoever, and you watch that, it's actually quite a brutal scene. I sort of go, I wonder what they're going to think about this, because the female character is in dire trouble until she reaches and grabs that stick. But it's real. There's nothing not real about that scene, and that was all what you created in that recipe, just working on the mats and just gently going into the moves, trying to get not going in and trying to make it all work right there and then. It took ages to get that worked out, and it worked out in the end perfectly.
Yeah, well, it took ages mainly because I was working with you, Andy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, is that what you meant when you said what the f-? You said that a lot. I thought you were talking to I thought you were talking to her. Now I'm sort of getting that you're actually talking to me.
I was like, God, no wonder I've got to have 100 sort of alternates here, because I don't know. So, but part of the job also is that the worst thing a choreographer can do is choreograph what he or she does best. You've got to remind yourself of who are you asking. Who's the person that's going to actually have to do this on camera, and you want it to be the actor. You don't want to use a stunt double. If we can get 80-90% of the actor, then they're the ones that bring the reality and the drama and the skill to a fight like any other scene. So part of it is to choreograph stuff and then work through with the actor and really honestly appraise their capabilities. And by that, you start to modify, so you make it comfortable for that person, not what the choreographer can do, who's skilled in a whole different way, but what that actor can do, what their physicality allows. And if you can do that, then what you said happens. They make it real because it's an honest expression of their capability rather than some sort of physical action that they're just really having trouble expressing.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Just a question, Richard. What was the first thing Andy said to you when you first met? Did he ask for an autograph?
Yeah, he was a bit embarrassing, Doug. He was a bit of a fanboy. I said, look, Andy, really, just give it a rest for a lot, mate. Let me just see what you're about. And I don't think I ended up giving him one even at the end of the shoot. That's the...
But was that before or after you asked me for mine, and then I found it in the bin later?
Yeah, that's it.
Great.